Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Educatedcollins Snap channel. How you doing? So I'm still working on like a bigger meta this video, but I did want to continue the Datamine discussion. Definitely had a lot of fun, and there's still a couple more new cards to go over. So let's just begin. So first, we do have 8 more cards to talk about. First one up is Jean Grey. Definitely remember her from X-Men, but have no idea what her power was. But her ability in this game currently is on reveal, the next card your opponent plays must be played here if possible. It's a 3 energy, 3 power card. Really just forces your opponent to play somewhere on 4. I could see this being relevant, right? 4 is a pretty key turn that a lot of pretty impactful cards do come out usually during that turn, so forcing them to play there. And as well, this doesn't have to be played on 3. This could be played on 5, right? So that could also be something to think about where, oh, let's force them to play somewhere on the last turn. That could definitely be a little bit more impactful. It does say that it only affects the next card. So it's not like the whole turn you have to play in one particular location. That might be too strong. But it does say that, oh, if you wanted to have like a big turn 4 or big turn 5, that has to be done in a particular lane. So that could be useful. My initial thoughts right now is maybe the power's too low. 3/3. It's kind of like wave, but it doesn't have like that wave impact in terms of how swingy it could be. But obviously, we haven't played with the card. But my initial assessments is that, oh, maybe it has a little bit of weaknesses. But I could definitely see it being used just to kind of be another control tool. So we'll have to see. And if there's any synergy, then obviously it gets better. So next up, we have Lady Deathstrike. I did already know about this card, so that is something interesting. Most of these cards I really didn't know about until making this video, essentially. Had no, I didn't pay attention to Datamine stuff. But Lady Deathstrike, I did hear people talk about, maybe just because it's another Shang-Chi, a little bit different. But it is a 6 power, 4 energy card on reveal. Destroy the enemy card with the highest power dislocation. So the difference with this is it can hit anything, and it doesn't have to be played essentially before you play this, right? They could have played the card, and you can play this afterwards knowing that it's there. So another thing is, like, let's say your opponent doesn't have anything in the location and you don't have priority. Well, if they play anything there, then you can just shut it down. So there's definitely some things to think about there. The power of Shang-Chi right now is that it's kind of cheap, especially with Zabu and Sarah, that you can play this and play another contingency plan. With this, you're kind of all-inning on that destroy effect. So you definitely have to hit something powerful, something that actually changes the game state. So that's maybe the issue. It is more flexible in that it doesn't have to be 9 plus power. You could hit 8 power or whatever. And if you do, that's a 6/12, right? If you hit 8 power, which isn't horrible, but isn't like game changingly strong as well. So definitely think this will probably see play. It definitely feels meta dependent, and that if your opponent's summoning big cards, then this has a big effect. But if your opponent is summoning tons of small units or things like that, then it's really not going to feel as impressive. And right now we're in a Sarah meta, and Sarah decks tend to summon tons of small units. So I think in this particular meta it wouldn't be too good, but there's definitely room for this to shine. So maybe another meta I'll be like, this is really, really good. Next up, we have Legion. So Legion changes other locations into this location. It's a 5 power, 4 energy card. Definitely an interesting one. I do like location changers, but it is hard to build a deck around it, mostly because they're so random and there's no consistency in how the locations appear, and like, oh, I'll be able to take advantage of this and this and this. So there's some locations this could be really good in, but I think most of the time it'll be hard to find consistent value with a card like Legion unless your deck has some new tech to be able to mess with locations with more clarity. I definitely think you're just gonna struggle to find how to take advantage of this in most games. And it only has 4 power, right? So that's something you also have to keep in mind, that you are losing value in terms of power to use this card. And if the card isn't giving you +5 points of value or something like that, then it's really not super impressive. So it's definitely a cool card. I don't mind it being in the game currently, but I think it would struggle to stand out in the 5-drop area currently with its ability. So that's like my issue with it. But it is a cool card, but I'm not like super impressed. So next up we have Mephisto or something like that. And this is definitely a cool card. Kind of feels like a meme card in my opinion. If you win this game, double your winnings. It's a 6 energy, 0 power card. You have to be already demolishing to do this. Obviously, I think everyone's gonna think about Mr. Negative, and I think that's probably where it's going to land in a deck if it did. The issue with Mr. Negative though is that Mr. Negative doesn't really win all that often, and when you win because you get negative and then people leave. So I don't even know if you'll be able to play this card in negative, because when you get negative on 3 or 4, right, they're not going to stay till the end of the game, right? So you'll have to like tempo this out essentially on the as soon as you get it. All right, so you're telling people, okay, you have that 6 power, now you can leave for 2 or 4. So it's going to be hard to get that 16-point swing if you're already like presenting, hey, I'm a negative deck and I got what I wanted. So that's kind of the issue. And in general, decks is hard to win while wasting 6 energy, unless you did like turn 1. But even then, like, you're still gonna probably struggle. So it's just a hard card to use, but that's the point, I would say, right? Because if you win, you double your winnings, but most of the time you're going to be losing with this card, and that's really where things struggle. But I think there's just there's just those type of players that will play this card, there's those type of players that want to do something cool, want to be that guy or girl that can win with this card, and they'll just try it and see. And that's perfectly fine. I respect that attempt. I just think, like, from a competitive standpoint, it's going to be a little bit difficult to really have that consistency with a card like that. But super cool, super fun effect. Hope it stays in the game in some iteration. Next up, we have Mirage. So after you play this, disguise it as Mr. Fantastic after the final turn, reveal it. So it's a 4 energy, 5 power card that disguises as a 3 power card. Seems interesting, right? It would definitely be more interesting. Oh, okay. So this is interesting for sure. I guess making it a 4 power card makes it like not just strictly better than Mr. Fantastic, right? Because let's say this was a 3 power card. Why would you ever play this or play Mr. Fantastic over something that disguises? Well, I guess the the benefit is that you get Mr. Fantastic, right? You get Mr. Fantastic, but it's so much more powerful to bait your opponent. So I guess you have to make it a 4-drop. If this was a 3-drop, it would be too powerful. Unless it was like a 3/3 or something like that, right? Then maybe it would be more manageable. But why would you play a 3/3 over a Mr. Fantastic, right? Like that's that doesn't even make sense. It's just Mr. Fantastic is way better. So I guess the fact that it's a 4 is perfectly fine. And you just have to be careful because if your opponent plays, because it's too easy to tell it's a Mirage, right? Because Mr. Fantastic, you have to play in the middle a lot of times, and you want to play it on turn 3. So if you're playing a turn 4 Mr. Fantastic, especially in a random lane that's not the middle, that's gonna be a big tell once this is in the game. So I don't know how easily you could disguise this card as Mr. Fantastic in the first place. I think people are just gonna know that, hey, you played Mr. Fantastic on 4. Yeah, that's a Mirage. I'm not sure you're going to trick that many people, especially after maybe like a month or so, like after it's been in the game and people start playing with it. I don't know how easy you're going to trick people. Obviously, people are going to fall for it for sure, but there's a lot of tells, in my opinion. There's a lot of tells that people will be able to identify that it's not an actual Mr. Fantastic. So with that in mind, it kind of, after thinking about it, it makes me think about this a little less. Obviously, you're going to catch off guard newer players or players that are not paying attention. But I think if people are actually like playing, focusing on the game, it's going to be pretty easy to tell that is not a Mr. Fantastic where it would normally be played. So still cool. I'm not super sold on its power level currently. All right, so next up, here we have the upgraded Mr. Fantastic, the Mrs. Marvel. So, or Miss Marvel, sorry. Ongoing, if this is your only card here, adjacent locations gain plus 5 power. I think this card is crazy. What? I think this card is absolutely insane. Obviously, you don't get to play in the middle lane, but you're putting 5 power in adjacent lanes. This is a 3 power 14, 3 energy 14 power card. How is that not like Omega strong, right? How is that not? The problem is that you lose middle, and then you have to win both of the other lanes. But if you're playing this last turn, I think it's going to be easier for your opponent not to know that's your game plan. So that's kind of the thing. I think for sure initially this is going to be like crazy. Obviously, as people like adjust and this becomes more meta, then you'll lose that element of like, oh, element of surprise of like, hey, this is not obviously what I'm doing. And I think eventually what's gonna happen is you're not gonna play this middle. Like this is not always gonna be a middle location type of card. You might just play this to the left or the right, so that your opponent doesn't always just put 5 power in the middle lane and have a good answer, or 7 power, depending on what type of deck you're building, and have a good answer. So I definitely think this is a crazy card, because even if you take away the ongoing effect, it's a 3/4, which is not bad, right? Like a 3/4 is like base stats of like playable cards, and then it just has this like crazy, oh, I'll add 10 power for free effect if you meet my conditions, which is just really, really strong. So I don't know. I can't see this being fair at all, in my opinion. Obviously, the restriction is kind of hard to do, but I think if you're building a deck around it, it's not the hardest thing, right? And like surfer decks were like, oh, this is a great surfer card, things like that. So I definitely feel that this can do a lot of damage in the meta game if it comes out in this. So this one for sure is the one I have highest rated out of the ones we've seen so far. So pretty crazy card in my opinion. So next up we have Night Nurse. So this one is a 2 energy 2 power card. Add all cards you discarded or destroyed last turn to your hand. You discarded or destroyed. Wow, the fact that it's both is pretty flexible. It's 2 powers, so you can play it in a lot of cases. You discarded or destroyed. Does it count your opponent's cards? Like, let's say I Electron one and destroy their 1-drop. Can I Night Nurse and take their 1-drop? Because if that's the case, that's crazy, right? Like, let's say I play Moon Knight and then I take their card with Night Nurse. Because I destroyed it, right? I discarded it, right? Or is it just like only? I assume it's only our cards because. I mean, that's what I assume. I don't have any reasons for it, but that's my assumption. And even then, it seems pretty good. You'll be able to draw cards, right? You'll be able to discard. I wonder how you can go like Modok into Night Nurse, right? Or I guess Hellcow into Night Nurse and get your Hela back. Right? I think Hela decks will like this theoretically. I'm not exactly sure. And what type of destroy decks would like this? Maybe some kind of Deadpool destroy deck, right? And then you get 2 copies of Deadpool. Does that work? This one feels like I need to experiment with the card itself to really know how to best take advantage and what interactions actually work, right? Because the way it's worded, I can't fully tell what interactions are actually going to work here or not work here. So that is good that it is giving me ideas of like, oh, what if I do this? What if I do that? That those type of cards are always fun to play with, but it seems promising. I'm not gonna say it's like Miss Marvel or anything like that, but definitely seems like a promising card. And then last up here for today, we do have Random, and its ability is random. It's not. That's so unfortunate. At 4 energy, 0 power, on reveal, set your cards power equal to the power of a random card in your deck. So it is a little bit random in that effect. 4 power, set a card, random card in your deck. So you have to be playing a pretty heavy deck. Does this work with Shuri? I wonder. But probably not. But yeah, I mean, you have to build around this, right? This is a build around card. Something like Electro or something. Or Lockjaw maybe. Lockjaw maybe could do more, could be more effective. So you could go like, this could be like a second Dracula, right? This could be like a second Dracula. So you make a Dracula deck and you also have random in it. So you go random, you go Dracula, right? And then you have a bunch of big cards in there with maybe a Lockjaw. And I could definitely see that being a viable composition. So, I mean, until you get Shang-Chi, right? But yeah, I could see. I mean, I could see the idea of at least. And so and four energy is a pretty good stat right now because of Zabu. So definitely think you can do some work with this as long as you build your deck around this. So I'm actually think this is pretty good. But overall, those are the J to R or so. There's definitely one more of this type of video where we cover the rest of them. So I'm still working on meta tier list. Those usually take a long time. So and I got injured, but it's not too bad. And I feel better today for sure. So hope you guys enjoy this one. Take care of yourselves. Which ones did you like? What was your favorite? Actually, what was your favorite card? That's what I want to know. Not the strongest, but which one would you most like be excited to see in the game for whatever reason? And other than that, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.
Educatedcollins snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you tomorrow snap.